So at least once a year or as often as possible, I will try to, most of the time now, it's read a book or do an online seminar, or sometimes it is attend something live of something that I think I don't agree with. I'm sure there's lots of things that I refuse to engage in where maybe I could be 20% better to help someone, but I'm not at a point where I'm willing to give up the 80% of being frustrated and annoyed with giving my time and resources. So I don't do it very often. As far as the online stuff, I almost always have an online seminar in the queue. I think there's enough decent stuff out there, stuff that I would value, that's my podcast, especially this time of year, at least when we're filming, where I'm driving to Tampa all the time. This one I'm talking about, I did pay for it, so I can say whatever I want. I do get the sense that there's no reason to slam it, even though it's not very good, which was a gait analysis product. The whole notion, that my opinion is, when anybody that looks at gait without this test retest for like a return to activity or an objective measure, that's one thing. Using very high-tech cameras and or forced rooms, which of course we've seen, I think there's value there to see if some other intervention worked. I don't think the gait analysis itself should always be the metric that yields this. And I think most people that are really excited or into gait analysis just probably think it's really cool, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, they're very passionate. Just like it might be something that I may have extra emotional value for. But that's my opinion on anybody who really hangs their hat on gait analysis at this level, because they're basically using gait as your report card checklist for a musculoskeletal evaluation. And you're coming up with lots of endpoints that I think, if you're even getting there in an efficient way, which you're not, it's like this end around where you can get there much, much quicker, much, much faster. Where if you looked at individual components of the system, gait is made up of all those things, but it's far too complicated. And it really challenges a principle that I think is important, and that I will say part of why I would engage in something that I didn't think was good. It would tell me I was right, and I could further discard this type of stuff, or I could admit that I was wrong, and that has happened many, many times as I've been very public on it. This is not one of those times. As I was saying, the components of gait is way too fast, even though if you're walking slow, it's complex. You could argue you're using every joint in the body in some way. You could argue that the vestibular system is a component. Why would we look at something that's more complicated when you could look at something that's less complicated? We filmed a video not long ago about static posture, or that being a component of that talk, where that's too simple. Like, it's false, it's wrong. So there's got to be somewhere that we're going to value movement, but maybe movement that's not as complex and not as reciprocal and not as continuous and not as variable as gait. You can get that's what the seminar, you were getting to all of the same touch points if you had done an evaluation where you just looked at patterns, changed positions, eliminate joints, change the stabilization demands, and active versus passive, so that you can bucket your solutions from a rehab and or pain management standpoint on, okay, this component is pain. That means you could almost do anything. If pain can be anything, then anything can be a part of its solution. Mobility, where joints are never going to get into the right positions to absorb adaptive stress, and that is a particular stimulus to create that adaptation. Then you have stability motor control, where sometimes they can do it in some positions or under some conditions, and other times they can't. Well, that means they can do it, they're just not doing it, and they have to learn how to do it. And then lastly, some joints are really doing everything you need them to do at this basic level. Then you move forward and use something like gait to elicit fitness changes. Now, as you do that, you may find, if you have gait as this enormous value point, maybe the complexity of gait then leads to the next step of mobility or motor control limitations. But I don't think it should be the first. And that's what this seminar was doing. They had all sorts of fancy names for the different changes in gait, or the variations that each individual might demonstrate with. Okay, cool. I don't put that exactly in the exclusive category where you only need to subscribe to this methodology to even understand what these words meant. I'm not sure it was helping anybody because a lot of these categorizations of the differences in gait patterns was also for not someone for not in pain. And let's say if even if it was someone in pain, you'd have to go backwards and then get to all the points that I'm talking about, change positions, etc., that you didn't need to do the gait in the first place. You would find the chunks of where your issues are. You could always measure that against the standard that you think you need for gait, just like everything. Like if something's not painful, then I don't know that that's the same evaluation where something is painful. So you can always use a standard of movement beyond pain for this other terminal activity. For instance, I think there should be a movement evaluation level. Oh, there should always be three. One is at the human level. Do you have pain or not? Number two, for fitness. So just general fitness exercises. And then number three, sport specific or activity specific, where clearly the joint positions to throw a baseball is far different and probably more robust in the upper quarter than it would be to train to be a baseball player. Now you could have overlap in each and all so that you can get to more information faster. But at some point, it's, do you have pain? Do you have joints to train? Do you have joints to do your activity? So they're starting, when you use gait, you're kind of just mashing it all together. And I'm just finding that it's not nearly efficient. Now, remember, I'm not as passionate. I'm not as experienced. I don't have the repetitions because I don't believe in this. And it's so nuanced. I'm giving my opinion and my position. This doesn't make the people bad people. This just wasn't compelling for me. Probably in the early middle tens, when life was different for a lot of people, most of which I would still consider friends, we would kind of make our own courses, meaning we would contact somebody and pay their freight and be like, we're going to control the room. And we did this in Sacramento with, it's actually an ATC, which I had no idea at that time that California, how is it possible for an ATC to have like a storefront? They had like a clinic, a facility. Obviously in California, rules are really, really different. Aside from there being an earthquake, aside from there being a room full of everybody being comfortable with everybody, so everybody can almost say whatever you want. The two people that were kind of from the outside, I remember I had comments for them. I remember telling Dave Tenney that this course is so miserable that I am not going to say a word on day 3. I was silent the entire time, believe it or not. Did I mention there was an earthquake? Anyway, there was a gait, assessment piece here, and this, because they should show us what you do. He has somebody walk up and down, and he goes, look, do you see it? And I said, I don't see a thing. And that was on day 2, so I was still talking. Gait is so variable, that you can tell me you have a standard of things you like to look for and things that you think will relate to something else, but that doesn't mean your gait is wrong. And if your gait is not wrong, whatever you're finding there is not nearly as valid as this minimum standard. Gait doesn't have nearly a clear minimum standard. Man, I keep that smile on my face. I look back and there's probably maybe 12 or 15 people that I still talk to on a daily basis. And that was a fun time when we would make up our own seminars. But the instructor was really underwater because I think he had a lot of good things to share with us. He just chose not to, probably because of the goofballs that were not medical trained in there. And I do remember, this is less about gait training, but probably why I have this block on gait training. Just like always, it's on my sleeve. But he felt that because there weren't medically trained people in the room that he didn't want to teach everything. I don't have a huge problem with that, but the whole idea of doing something private would be that you should be able to get past that. And that would be the same standard I would use that we do a lot in the private consultation. If you control the room, do whatever you want with this information. You want to break the rules, you suck, go ahead. But I remember Gait, that whole, and I'm sure people watching this that were there, it was beyond hilarious on how, not just me, but others communicated during this seminar. Getting back to this Gait piece, again, I think the thing that I saw was when you take something that's really, really complex, if you're going to do it correctly, you have to track it back to the left so many steps that it's pointless to even look at Gait. It's pointless to look at an exercise, because there's not a wrong way to do it as nearly as much as there's many ways to do it. You might think one is better than the other, but that's not going to get you this clear view of where your problems are, what your problems are for anything other than Gait. So unless every single person walks into your facility paying while they're walking, then I'm not sure this is a good thing to be, basing your entire evaluation model on. I think start basic, use basic single repetition body weight movements, then maybe second or third level of evaluation when you need that information. That's where something like Gait or other more complex exposures can use the exact same principles, but now you have that as a standard. I don't think it's the right place to start.